Gareth was in the yard at first light. He had been there since before Kael came out, the specific quality of someone who had arrived early and was working through something that required physical occupation. He was running the garrison captains through a defensive rotation drill that was not noticeably different from the normal rotation drill, except that he had positioned himself where he could see the main house's secondary meeting room door. Kael watched him for a moment from the main house window. He went outside. He said, "Good morning." Gareth said, "It's in the meeting room." He said, "Yes." Gareth said, "Is it going to be staying long?" He said, "I don't know yet." Gareth looked at the meeting room door. He said, "I've encountered Keth domain fighters twice. In my prior assignment." A pause. "They're not what the recruitment books describe." He said, "No." Gareth said, "Champion rank." He said, "Yes." Gareth was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "All right." He returned his attention to the rotation drill. The garrison captains were waiting. He said something to them in the specific cadence of correction, and the drill resumed. Kael went to the meeting room. Veth was standing at the eastern window when he came in, looking at the barony yard, watching the garrison drill with the specific attention of a combat practitioner assessing a formation. It did not look away when Kael entered. It said, "Your training system is not what I expected from a frontier barony." He said, "We've been at this for 3 years." Veth said, "The older trainer." He said, "He's been here longer." Veth turned from the window. It said, "You've been thinking about what I said." He said, "Yes." Veth said, "And?" He said, "I want to understand the peace faction better. Not the political position, the reality of it. What it is." Veth looked at him. Then it sat down. It said, "The Keth domain has 17 cities. Settled for over 200 years. Not military installations, cities. Markets. Architecture. Agricultural systems designed for the jungle terrain. 3 generations of families who have never been in a combat role and have no interest in one." He said, "Yes." Veth said, "Your human political conception of demon territory is military. Armies. Commanders. The incursion force. The orders operation." It paused. "That is a specific fraction of what exists south of the Seal. We have musicians. We have people who spend their entire lives managing water systems. We have scholars who study the old texts and argue with each other about what they mean." A pause. "We have this because we are not primarily a war civilization, any more than you are. We are a civilization that has been intermittently at war." He said, "The Phantom Emperor's Pact." Veth said, "The pact was made by one domain lord. It was not voted on by the Demon Emperor's Council because there was no council at that time. The council structure was created 80 years later specifically to prevent one domain lord from committing everyone to something that served only their agenda." A pause. "By which point the pact's consequences were already running." He said, 300 years of consequences." Veth said, "Yes." It looked at him with the assessment that had been running since they first met, not decreasing, just continuing. "You know about the pact." He said, "I know about Valdorath the First." Veth was quiet for a moment. It said, "That is a name that is not commonly known on the human side." He said, "I read widely." Veth said, "Apparently." A pause. "What do you know?" He said that the Phantom Emperor was originally a human ruler who chose a specific form of continuation after his empire's destruction. That the demon territory's hostile posture toward humanity comes from that choice, not from demon civilization's own preferences or interests. He looked at Veth. And that there are people in the demon territories who know this and find the posture as useful as you'd expect a water system engineer to find 300 years of intermittent war to be. Veth was quiet for a long moment. It said, "You have unusual intelligence sources." He said, "I have a dead man's knowledge of this world, applied across 8 years. I don't mention this." He looked at Veth. "Treat it as background." Veth looked at him with an expression he was beginning to recognize as its version of finding something genuinely interesting rather than merely interesting for a human. It said, "The peace faction. You wanted to understand it." He said, "Yes." Veth said, "It is not a program. It is not an organization. It is a quality of interest, people and domain structures that find peace preferable to war for specific and practical reasons. Lord Keth's 60 years of trade relationships with human southern communities. The Jade Domain's agricultural exchange system that requires a functioning border for import of specific mineral compounds. The Stone Domain's scholar networks that have maintained communication with certain human monastic orders for 150 years through unofficial channels. A pause. None of them want the incursion. None of them benefit from the incursion. And none of them could stop Vethra unilaterally, which is why Lord Keth sent me here. He said, to stop it. Veth said, to begin the process of stopping it. The incursion is already degraded. Your work in the past months has significantly disrupted Vethra's operational capacity, and the Order's human-side support has been cut off at the frontier level. A pause. But Vethra has not yet received council pressure to withdraw. The Demon Emperor's council needs information it doesn't have. He said, you're prisoners. Veth said, among other sources. Yes. He said, I'm aware of what you know. I'm aware of what you've seen in the past 18 hours that tells you who I am as a commander and what kind of decision-maker I am. He looked at Veth directly. I believe what you've described. Not as a political position, as a factual account. Veth said, why? He said, because 2 Ash Domain fighters told me for 7 mornings about their own civilization in terms that were consistent with everything you've described about yours. They knew the target descriptions were wrong. They raised it through their command structure and were told to accept the official account. They didn't believe the official account. That's the behavior of people who are living for something other than war. People primarily oriented toward combat don't have that kind of conflict when asked to fight. Veth was quiet. He said, they were the ones who convinced me. You've confirmed it. Veth said, the Ash Domain fighters who said this. He said, yes. Veth said, they are well. He said, they are well. There was a quality to this silence that was different from the earlier silences. Not assessment, something that had landed and was settling. He said, what are you offering? Veth said, I told you what Lord Keth is offering. He said, you told me the frame. Tell me the substance. Veth said, the substance is this. I have access to the accounts of 4 Domain Lord staff who were approached by Order representatives over the past 3 years. 3 of those lords refused. 1, Vethra accepted. The refusal accounts contain specific information about who the Order representatives were, what they proposed, what operational language they used, and, in one case, an identifiable physical description and a partial name. A pause. That is the substance. Cross-referenced with what you know from the frontier, it establishes a picture of the Order's demon territory operational layer that does not currently exist in any human intelligence archive. He said, and you want? Veth said, a guarantee that the peace faction is not targeted in the kingdom's military response to the incursions. Not a general promise, a specific, personal commitment. He said, give me until this evening. Veth said, you're going to talk to her. He said, yes. Veth said, good. He went to find Seraphine. Outside, Gareth was watching the rotation drill again. He was not looking at the meeting room door anymore. He had decided something and the decision had settled. Kael noted this and filed it. His father was at the east end of the barony yard, talking with the supply steward about the winter grain inventory. Aldrich looked up when Kael passed, nodded once, and returned to the conversation with the specific ease of a man who had decided to trust his son's judgment about whatever was in the meeting room. Because he had learned 3 years ago that his son's judgment about things was reliably sound and panic was not a useful response to things he didn't fully understand. The December morning was sharp and clear. The frontier was operational. The commission maintenance team was due in 3 days for the border seal anchor repair. There was more work to do. There always was. He spoke with Seraphine in the study for an hour. He told her everything Veth had described about the peace faction, the 4 domain refusal accounts, the specific intelligence it was offering. She listened without interrupting, which was her way with information that needed to be received completely before analysis began. When he finished, she said, "What's in the refusal accounts?" He said, "Identification material on the Order's demon territory representatives. Physical descriptions. Partial names. Operational language used in recruitment attempts. One account apparently includes enough detail to identify the representative with high probability. She said, the commission case. He said, would become substantially more complete. The Order's operations in human territory are documented. Their operations in demon territory are not. If we can establish that the same organization was running parallel operations on both sides of the seal, coordinating the human side anchor sabotage with the demon side command infiltration, the scale of the operation changes the legal framework. She said, from Order-connected operatives influence frontier security to deliberate coordination of a cross-border manufactured war. He said, yes. She said, what does Veth want? He said, a guarantee that the peace faction won't be targeted in the kingdom's military response. Specific. Personal. She said, not institutional. He said, not institutional. She said, because institutional guarantees require official acknowledgement that a guarantee was made, which requires official acknowledgement that there's a peace faction to guarantee, which requires official acknowledgement that a demon champion came to our command post under a white flag and we invited it to stay. She looked at the documentation on her desk. Which is what we're going to have to acknowledge eventually, but not yet. He said, yes. She said, go back to it tonight. We'll talk after. He said, yes. He went back to the meeting room that evening. Veth was at the table. The day had passed in a specific quiet. It had been given access to the barony's eastern courtyard for the afternoon and had apparently spent several hours sitting on the stone wall at the yard's edge, watching the frontier. Kael had not interrupted this. The garrison sentries had maintained professional distance. He sat across the table. He said, the offer is intelligence on the Order's demon territory operations, the 4-domain refusal accounts with identification material on Order representatives, in exchange for a guarantee that the peace faction will not be targeted in the kingdom's military response to the incursions. Veth said, yes. He said, I cannot guarantee what the kingdom does. I cannot guarantee what the commission recommends, what the noble council votes, or what military operations the crown authorizes. He looked at Veth. I can guarantee what I do. I will not participate in, recommend, or facilitate any action targeting the peace faction. Specifically, the Keth domain, the Jade domain, the Stone domain, and the other domains whose representatives you've described as part of the peace orientation. Within the scope of my authority and my influence, they will not be targeted. Veth looked at him. The evaluation was longer than any of the previous evaluations. He let it run. This was the specific moment Veth had come to reach, standing at the edge of a decision about whether the word of one 16-year-old frontier commander on a personal guarantee was worth the intelligence Lord Keth had sent him to trade. The yard was quiet outside. The December night was beginning its specific cold. Veth said, what is the scope of your authority and influence? He said, at present, the Eastern Frontier's military command, the Eastern Frontier Compact's operational intelligence, and direct access to the Commission's investigative record. Within 2 years, significantly larger. He said the second part without qualification. He was not performing confidence, he was giving Veth the honest picture. The guarantee is as good as I am. If I fail at what I'm doing, it becomes moot. If I succeed, it is substantive. Veth said, you think you will succeed? He said, I think the work I've been doing for 8 years is going to produce results. Yes. Veth was quiet for a moment. Then it said, the 2 Ash domain fighters, when you spoke with them for 7 mornings. What was it about them? He said, I asked them questions and they corrected my mistakes. There's a specific quality to someone who corrects you when they don't have to, when giving you the wrong answer would be safer and more convenient. They corrected me anyway. A pause. That quality is not consistent with a civilization that wants to be at war. Veth said, no. It was quiet for a long moment. Then, that is enough. He said, we need to agree on the channel. Veth said, the indirect channel Lord Keth proposed, a specific messenger route through the southern trade corridor, using a contact who operates in both territories. The route is active. Lord Keth has used it for commercial correspondence for 14 years. The communications would appear as trade documentation. He said, deniable. Veth said, deniable. What each side gives the other is contained in standard trade format documentation that reads as commercial exchange to anyone who intercepts it. The actual content requires a key that Lord Keth and you would hold independently. He said, I'll need to establish a cover correspondent on the human trade side. Veth said, you have 14 years to do it. He said, I have 3 days. Veth looked at him. He said, I have an information network. I'll route through the Tauren Merchant Guild's southern representative. They already have a legitimate trade contact in the corridor. Veth said, Tauren. He said, Guildmaster Tauren. He operates in the capital. His southern representative is based at the port of Koval. Veth said, I know the Koval merchant community. A pause, the dry register. They are reliable correspondents. He said, yes. He left the meeting room and went to find Seraphine. She was in the study, still working. The lamp was burning at its late evening level, the specific height she adjusted it to when she intended to keep going past midnight. She looked up when he came in. He said, it's agreed. She said, what are the terms? He told her. She said, through Tauren's network. He said, the Koval representative has existing trade correspondence in the corridor. The routing is clean. She said, the intelligence from the refusal accounts. He said, comes through the same channel once the first exchange document has been sent. She was quiet for a moment. She set down the pen. He said, I know you have objections. She said, I have 4 of them. He said, I know. She said, we'll talk about them tomorrow morning. Tonight you need to write to the Koval representative, and I need to finish this correspondence. He said, yes. He went to the main table and began drafting the letter to Tauren's southern representative. The letter would look like a routine intelligence network communication. The actual instruction, establish a legitimate trade correspondence channel to a new southern contact through the corridor, was embedded in the standard factor routing language that Kael had been using with Tauren's network for 3 years. He wrote it in 20 minutes. He sealed it and put it in the morning dispatch. He wrote in the private document, the proposal is accepted. Veth's terms. My terms. The channel through Koval will be active in 2 weeks. He closed the document. He looked at the barony yard through the main room window. The December night was fully settled. The garrison sentries were at their positions. In the secondary meeting room, a gold-equivalent demon champion was spending its second night as a guest at a frontier barony because a 16-year-old commander had honored a white flag. He found that he did not regret any of it. He went to bed before Seraphine's lamp went out. The next morning, the study, after the pool data cycle had been reviewed, the commission maintenance team's arrival confirmed for 2 days hence, and the 4 letters to the remaining compact lords drafted and sealed. She had waited until the routine work was done, which he recognized as deliberate, not avoidance, but the specific practice of someone who wanted to have the argument without the argument contaminating the morning's necessary tasks. She set down her pen. She said, for objections. He said, yes. She said, first, this is diplomatically insane. There is no legal framework in the kingdom's charter, the commission's mandate, or any compact agreement for a personal guarantee to a demon representative. A personal guarantee made by a frontier commander without royal sanction, institutional backing, or any countervailing legal authority is not binding on anyone except you. If the kingdom decides to target the Keth domain in a military response to the incursions, your personal guarantee provides no protection. It only implicates you in having made commitments that conflict with royal authority. He said, yes. She said, second, it's legally undefined. The guarantee is a promise with no enforcement mechanism and no institutional standing. In any legal proceeding, commission, noble council, or royal, it carries no weight. If it's ever made public, it will be characterized as an individual officer making unauthorized foreign policy commitments. He said, yes. She said, third, it is politically catastrophic if discovered. The compact standing with the other 4 lords rests on the structure being credible as a frontier defense alliance, not a private diplomatic operation. If it becomes known that the compact's intelligence officer made a private guarantee to a demon champion in exchange for intelligence on a secret organization, the compact lords will question everything we've told them. He said, yes. She said, "Fourth, it is exactly the kind of unilateral move that creates enemies we don't need right now. The commission case is proceeding. The noble council work is proceeding. The capital operation is proceeding. Every piece of this is built on a documented, legally sound, politically defensible foundation. One undocumented personal guarantee to a demon undermines the credibility of the structure we've spent 3 years building." He said, "Yes." She said, "You know I'm right about all 4. He said, "You're right about all 4. She looked at him. She said, "Then explain why you agreed to it anyway." He said, "Because the intelligence value is high enough that the political cost is acceptable to me. The specific nature of the guarantee is narrow enough that the exposure risk is manageable. The long-term implications of a demon peace faction that has a defined obligation to me are strategically significant, and the practical reality of the Southern Front is that it cannot be permanently closed through military force alone." He looked at her. "Those are the 4 reasons that outweigh the 4 objections." She said, "Walk through them." He said, "The intelligence value. The refusal account material gives us identification material on the Order's demon territory representatives. Cross-referenced with the Frontier case, it establishes that the Order was running coordinated operations on both sides of the seal simultaneously. That changes the legal scale. The Commission is currently building a case about Order influence in Frontier security. The refusal accounts support a case about Order coordination of a cross-border manufactured war. That is a qualitatively different charge." She said, "Granted." "Continue." He said, "The narrow guarantee. I guaranteed that within my authority and influence, I would not participate in, recommend, or facilitate targeting of the peace faction. I did not guarantee the kingdom's behavior. I did not commit the compact. I did not commit the commission. I committed myself, specifically, within the scope of what I actually control." She said, "The scope of what you control is going to expand significantly if this work succeeds. A narrowly stated guarantee today becomes a substantial commitment tomorrow." He said, "Which is why I was precise about the scope. I said, within the scope of my authority and my influence. If my influence expands, the guarantee's effective scope expands." "That's true." Veth understood it as true. "I didn't obscure it." She said, "You told Veth that your authority and influence would expand." He said, "Yes." She was quiet for a moment. She said, "You told a demon champion who came to assess your credibility that you expected to accumulate significantly more power." He said, "Yes." She said, "That's not a narrow guarantee." He said, "No. But it's an honest one." She looked at him for a long moment. He looked back. The study's December light was coming through the eastern window, the specific light of a morning that had turned clear and cold, the kind that made the room's interior seem exact. She said, "The long-term implications." He said, "A demon domain that has a defined, specific obligation to me, not a treaty, not an alliance, but a transaction with a clear record on both sides, is a relationship that is worth maintaining." Lord Keth is pragmatic. Pragmatic relationships are reliable. In 10 years, when the Southern Front needs something other than military management, having an existing channel to the peace faction's principal lord is worth more than the current political risk. She said, "You're planning 10 years ahead." He said, "I've been planning 10 years ahead since I was 8. She said, "That's the most unsettling thing you've ever said to me." He said, "The practical reality of the Southern Front. The seal anchor has been repaired. The immediate breach is closed. But the structural problem, the existence of a demon military faction that has been told the wrong story about human intentions, is not solved by closing the breach. Vethera has been given 3 years of false information about human military pressure. Her force has been used as someone else's instrument, and some of her commanders know this. The peace faction contact is the beginning of a conversation that could eventually reach Vethera's own council." He looked at her. "Military force closes the breach. Diplomacy closes the war." She said, "We don't have the authority to conduct demon diplomacy." He said, "I'm not conducting demon diplomacy. I'm exchanging intelligence with a demon representative through an indirect channel. The distinction matters legally." She was quiet for a longer time. He let her be quiet. The commission maintenance team would arrive in 2 days. The letter to Torrens' Kael representative was in the morning dispatch. The 4 compact letters were sealed. The practical machinery was already in motion. She said, "You're right about the intelligence value and the long-term implications." He said, "And you're right about the legal exposure and the political risk." She said, "So we're arguing about weight, not substance." He said, "Yes." She said, "Then I want to talk about the fact that you agreed to this before you talked to me." He said, "I know." She said, "That's a different conversation from the 4 objections." He said, "Yes." She said, "This afternoon." He said, "Yes." She looked at the documentation on the desk. Then she looked at him in the specific way she had when she was saying something that mattered more than the words carrying it. The intelligence value is what it is. You're right that the cross-border coordination case is qualitatively different. The Kael channel is clean. She paused. That doesn't mean the other conversation doesn't need to happen. He said, "It does." She said, "Good." She picked up her pen. He went back to the main table. The December morning continued in its specific clear cold, and the frontier was operational, and the conversation they both knew they needed to have was waiting until afternoon. The afternoon. The study. She had cleared the desk of the morning's correspondence and set it away, which was a specific action. She was making space for a conversation that needed space. He sat across from her. She said, "You made a commitment before you consulted me." He said, "I made an offer. Whether it becomes a commitment depends on whether we proceed." She said, "You made an offer that requires my agreement retroactively." He said, "Yes." She said, "That is not how this works." He said, "No, it isn't." She looked at him. She said, "The conversation with Veth happened in real time. I understand that. I understand that the offer emerged from the context of the conversation and wasn't planned in advance as a specific thing you were going to propose." A pause. "I understand all of that. And it doesn't change the fact that you committed yourself and effectively committed me, given that my royal envoy authority is part of the legal cover for everything we're doing here, to a position before you asked whether I agreed with it." He said, "Yes." She said, "When I arrived at the frontier 3 weeks ago, we had a conversation about how we work. The division of labor. The absence of hierarchy. The fact that we discuss and reach conclusions together." A pause. "That was the agreement. Implicit but real." He said, "Yes." She said, "Was that agreement still in effect during your conversation with Veth yesterday evening?" He said, "Yes." She said, "Then." He said, "I moved faster than I should have." The conversation reached a decision point where I was either going to say what I said or lose the contact, or so I assessed. I assessed wrong. I could have stopped, told Veth I needed to consult with the royal envoy before proceeding, and come to you that evening. The contact would not have been lost. Veth would have understood that as a legitimate process. He looked at her. "I didn't do that. I made the offer in the room and came to you after." She said, "Why?" He said, "Because I was certain you would agree after the argument." She was quiet. He said, "That is the honest answer. I was certain the reasons were sufficient. I was certain you would reach the same conclusion after examining them, and I moved forward on the basis of my certainty about your eventual conclusion rather than on the basis of your actual input." She said, "You decided for me and then informed me." He said, "Yes." She said, "That's not the same as 2 people reaching conclusions together." He said, "No." She said, "Do you understand why that matters?" He said, "Because the form is not incidental. If I decide for you when I'm certain of your conclusion, then the discussion that follows is not actually a discussion. It's me presenting a justification for something already decided and you evaluating whether to accept the justification. The equality is performed, not real." She said, "Yes." He said, "I was doing that." She said, "Yes." He said, "It won't happen again." She looked at him with the looking that was not assessment. She said, "I know you believe that right now." He said, "I know what it is I did." The problem was not inattention, it was a specific calculation about your eventual agreement that substituted for actual consultation. "If I know what the calculation was, I can check against it." She said, "Can you?" He said, "I can't guarantee I'll catch every instance. I can guarantee I'll try harder to catch it than I have been." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I would have agreed." He said, "I know." She said, "But I should have been asked before you spoke." He said, "Yes." She said, "And next time?" He said, "Next time I stop the conversation and come to you." She said, "Yes." The study was quiet. The December afternoon light was slanting through the western window now, lower than the morning light. He could hear the garrison training session ending in the yard, Gareth's voice at the specific cadence of dismissal. She said, after a moment, "We've been doing this for 3 weeks, and this is the first time we've disagreed about process." He said, "Yes." She said, "In 3 weeks of working together in active operational conditions, we've had 3 substantive disagreements about emphasis, each resolved in under 2 minutes. And 1 process disagreement that required a separate afternoon." He said, "Yes." She said, "That's a reasonable ratio." He said, "Ketterly would say so." She said, "Ketterly said it in a tone that suggested he found it somehow reassuring." A pause. "I now understand why." He said, "Because it's not strategic." She said, "Because it's not strategic." She looked at him. People who are managing a power calculation don't have process arguments about the fact that one of them moved too fast. They have arguments about who made the decision and who gets credit for it. He said, "Yes." She said, "That's not what this was." He said, "No." The specific quality of the silence that followed was one he'd been filing since she arrived, not empty, not performed, just the comfortable weight of 2 people who had said the necessary thing and were sitting in what came after. He had been noting it without examining it. He said, "The compact letters went out this morning. Alden Vane will have his by tomorrow. The other 3 by day after tomorrow." She said, "How do you expect them to receive it?" He said, "Alden Vane, steady. Brennan, angry, then steady. Ketterly, analytical, then steady. Lord Merrick, through Lady Merrick, who will want more information than the letter provides and will write asking for it." She said, "You've thought about this." He said, "I've had 3 weeks to think about the Frontier Lord's likely responses to the information that one of them was the Order's asset inside the compact." She said, "What do you tell Merrick's follow-up question?" He said, "The full account. He deserves it. He's committed significant resources to this structure on the basis of trusting the intelligence it produces. The compact's intelligence operation identifying the asset inside its own structure is not evidence against the intelligence operation, it's evidence for it." She said, "Yes." She looked at the desk. "I'm leaving the day after tomorrow." He said, "I know." She said, "The commission maintenance team arrives the same day. The anchor repair will take 2 to 3 days. You should be present for the maintenance team's initial assessment." A pause. "Not because they need you there, because it's appropriate for the compact's commanding officer to be present when commission personnel arrive for a repair that resulted from a compact security investigation." He said, "Yes." She said, "Beth." He said, "Beth will stay until the Kael channel is established and the first exchange is sent. Then it returns to Lord Keth. Probably a week." She said, "Have Aldous translate for Gareth." He looked at her. She said, "Gareth has been watching Beth since it arrived. He's not alarmed, he's curious. The specific curiosity of someone who has encountered something unexpected and wants to understand it properly." A pause. "If they have a conversation, it will be useful for both of them and Gareth will stop standing in the yard with that expression." He said, "What expression?" She said, "The expression of someone trying to reconcile everything they know about demons with the demon that keeps sitting on the stone wall watching the barony operate." He said, "I'll arrange it." She said, "Good." She picked up her pen. He picked up his. They worked through the afternoon in the specific quiet of the study, 2 people who had said the necessary thing and were now doing the next necessary work, which was also a way of saying what they were not examining in words. The December sun went below the western ridge. The lamp came on. The Frontier was operational. There was more work to do. The compromise was designed in 2 sessions. The first session was Kael and Beth in the meeting room that evening, working through the specific mechanics, the Kael channel routing, the documentation format, the key structure for the trade language encoding. Beth was precise about this. It had clearly prepared. Lord Keth had anticipated that a channel would be agreed and had given Veth the mechanics in advance. The second session was the next morning, shorter, to confirm one detail, the specific piece of intelligence Kael would give Veth in return for the first tranche of the refusal accounts. He said, the Order's initial contact with Vethera, 3 years ago. The representative used Church of Light administrative cover for the first approach. This is consistent with the Order's operational pattern for all first contacts in this theater. They use existing ecclesiastical administrative structures, the Church of Light's regional assessment program specifically, because it provides legitimate access to frontier barons, frontier lords, and, through the seal maintenance structure, to border-adjacent territory. He looked at Veth. If Lord Keth wants to identify which Church of Light regional assessors in the demon-adjacent corridor have been operating as Order contacts, the assessment records will show it. Any assessor who visited a domain lord in the past 3 years and whose visit was followed by an Order contact attempt is a probable Order operative. Veth was quiet for a moment. Then, that is specific. He said, it's what I have. Cross-referenced against your domain lord's refusal accounts, it should give Lord Keth the identification path. Veth said, the 4 accounts I have include 2 assessment visits. I had not identified the connection. He said, now you have it. Veth said, yes. That was the exchange. It was, as Kael had told Seraphine it would be, deniable. It would appear in the Koval channel documentation as a note about Church of Light regional assessment visit patterns in relation to trade corridor activity. The kind of commercial intelligence that a human trade factor and a demon commercial correspondent might legitimately exchange about cross-border administrative movement. The first document in the Koval channel would be sent when the Koval representative confirmed the contact. That would take 10 days to 2 weeks. Veth said, I'll be gone before the confirmation arrives. He said, I'll send you the confirmation through Lord Keth's existing trade route. The same route you used to contact me. Veth said, I'll tell Lord Keth to expect it. He said, yes. Veth looked at him for a moment. It said, the frontier battle. The one where your sovereign core, it paused. Something happened during the major assault 4 months ago. The one where you fought the silver equivalent commander. He said, yes. Veth said, and there's something happening now that is different from a standard gold aura field. I've been watching it since I arrived. The ambient signature. A pause. I'm not going to ask what it is. I'm going to tell you that Lord Keth scholars have studied the historical records of what they call the sovereign manifestation. The last recorded instance was 300 years ago. Veth said this in the flat register of someone reporting a fact. Lord Keth would like you to know that she is aware of what you are. He said, what am I? Veth said, according to her scholars, the structural response to what is coming. A pause. She did not send me here because of the incursions. The incursion was the opportunity. She sent me here because she wanted to meet you before the situation became irreversible. He looked at Veth. Veth said, that is all I am authorized to tell you. He said, tell Lord Keth that I look forward to the conversation when conditions allow it. Veth said, I will. The commission maintenance team arrived the same morning. 3 practitioners, certified border seal specialists, with documentation from Commissioner Vare's team authorizing the repair under the same royal envoy authority that had covered the forensic assessment. They were efficient and professional. They went to Burin's anchor point with an escort and were expected back in 2 days. The 4 compact lords' responses to Kael's letters about Burin arrived over the following 2 days. Aldenvain's response was the first, 2 pages, precise, asking 3 specific questions about the extent of the intelligence exposure and the compact's current security posture. No performance. Just the relevant questions. Brennan's response was the second, 4 pages. The first page was anger, specific and controlled, not theatrical. The second page was practical. The third and fourth were a proposal for enhanced compact security protocols going forward. He had moved from the anger to the practical in a single document, which was consistent with everything Kael knew about Brennan. Ketterly's response was the third, 1 page. It said, I had my own doubts about Burin. I did not raise them because I had no evidence. I should have told you. I will tell you in future if I have doubts. Ketterly. That was the whole letter. Lady Merrick's letter came on behalf of Lord Merrick, 6 pages of questions, exactly as predicted. Kael wrote a 6-page response. On the morning of the 4th day, Seraphine packed her correspondence. He found her in the main hall. She had the sealed packet for the capital, commission documentation, noble council brief fragments, the full succession analysis, the letter to the person who needed to know what he was walking into. Everything she had been building since she arrived. She said, "I'll be at the capital within 4 days." She said it to the packed documents, adjusting the seal. "The commission presents next week. I'll be in the room." He said, "Yes." She said, "The frontier." "You'll." He said, "The pool data cycle continues. The maintenance team is at the anchor. Veth leaves at the end of the week. The garrison training is holding. Gareth is fine." She looked at him. She said, "I know all of that." He said, "I know you do." She said, "I was going to say, you'll write if anything changes." He said, "Yes." She said, "Good." She picked up the correspondence packet. She was wearing the traveling arrangement, the specific practicality of someone who had done this trip before and knew what the roads were at this time of year. He had not seen her in traveling clothes since she arrived. She had been in working clothes for 3 weeks. He said, "The frontier is better for having you here." She looked at him. He said, "I mean the work. The commission case. The compact supply lines. The anchor investigation." A pause. "All of it." She said, "I know what you mean." She looked at him for a moment longer. Then she said, "Right?" He said, "Yes." She left. He stood in the main hall for a moment after she was gone. The barony was its usual morning self, the specific sound of a place that was doing what it was supposed to do. His father would be at the mine inspection later. Gareth was in the yard. The pool data courier would arrive in an hour. He wrote in the private document, "She left this morning. The capital operation continues. The frontier holds." He wrote, "The frontier is better for having her here." I said it. It was true. It was not the complete truth. He stopped. He closed the document. He went to the main table where the pool data would arrive and began the morning's work. The assault arrived without warning. Not without intelligence. The pool data from the morning cycle had shown an unusual concentration in the southeastern corridor, and he had flagged it as requiring monitoring rather than immediate response. The held positions were gone. Something had moved. He had been watching it for 4 hours when the Sovereign's eye caught the force's front edge passing into its radius. Not a raid configuration, not the probing pattern, not the organized but measured approach of the major battle 4 months ago. This was a different weight entirely. He said, to the garrison captain nearest him, "Sound the general alarm. Full deployment." Then he sent a runner to Gareth. The force was larger than anything they had faced. He counted through the eye as fast as he could. Standard fighters in the hundreds, gold equivalent aura signatures, more than 4, more than 6. He was still counting, and at the front, a single presence that was not gold. His ambient awareness had encountered diamond-level aura once in his life, during a training session with Gareth running at full output. It had a specific quality, not louder than gold, exactly, but different in kind. Deeper. Like the difference between a sound and the resonance the sound produced in the walls of a room. The demon commander at the front of this force had that quality. He had 8 minutes before the force reached the perimeter. He found Gareth at the main gate. Gareth said, "I see it." He said, "Diamond equivalent." Gareth said, "Yes." He looked at Kael. "You hold the eye. I hold the front." He said, "The gold equivalent fighters, I counted 8. They'll screen for the commander." Gareth said, "I know." He said, "Gareth." Gareth said, "I know." He pulled on his gauntlet, the specific unhurried movement of someone who had been preparing for this kind of thing his entire life. "Dear job. I'll do mine." He went to the ridge overlook. The garrison had deployed. The compact's combined forces, Brennan's militia captains were here, 2 of Ketterly's gold-capable aides, the frontier garrison at full strength. 400 fighters, 7 gold-capable. Against a force that the eye was still counting. The assault hit the perimeter at speed. He extended the Sovereign's eye. Not the standard 200-meter ambient, all of it. The full directed extension he had used twice before, but this time not 12 kilometers and slow, targeting a specific point. This time immediate and wide, the entire engagement. The entire field. Every position, every fighter, every aura signature in the battle in real time. The core responded. The familiar warmth, the presence that was always there, that grew slightly more present with each major understanding surged. Not with heat. With expansion. He felt the eye extend to the ridge lines, to the corridor approaches, to the barony walls behind him, to the positions of every garrison sentry, every compact fighter, the 3 commission maintenance team practitioners at the anchor point 3 kilometers south. The specific mass and position of every combatant in a field that was well beyond anything the eye had covered before. He could hear the battle at the perimeter. He was tracking it completely. Gareth had made contact with the diamond equivalent commander at the assault's leading edge. The clash was audible even from the ridge, aura on aura, a sound that was less like a strike and more like pressure differentials meeting at a seam. The gold equivalent escort fighters were trying to reach Gareth from both sides. 2 of Ketterly's aides were holding the eastern screen. Brennan's militia captains were holding the western approach. He tracked everything. The eye kept expanding. He hadn't asked it to expand further. It was expanding on its own or not on its own, because there was no separation between him and it, but the expansion was coming from something he wasn't doing consciously. The warm presence was pushing. The core was responding to the pressure of the battle and doing something with the response that was neither collapsing nor stabilizing at the current level. He could sense the entire frontier. Not in detail, not the granular knowing of the standard 200-meter field, where he could count individual grass blades if he focused. A broader awareness, the shape of the land, the positions of every living presence within miles, the specific weight of the compact's positions and the assault force's positions as a total picture rather than a series of individual data points. The commission maintenance team was abandoning the anchor site and falling back toward the barony. They had heard the alarm. Good. He tracked them. He tracked Gareth. The diamond equivalent demon commander was better than the silver equivalent had been. Not incomparably so, Gareth was Gareth, and Gareth had 35 years on a diamond aura that was at full output, but the pressure was real. Gareth was holding. The 8 gold equivalent escorts were being occupied by the compact's gold-capable fighters. 2 compact fighters were down. He felt their auras go quiet. The core cracked. It was not pain. It was a sound that was also a feeling, something structural, deep in the center of what he was, giving way. He had felt it once before, in the aftermath of the major battle, briefly, a hairline sense that something that had always been solid was not as solid as he thought. This time it did not hairline. It opened. And then it stopped. The fracture, whatever it was, stopped at the edge of its expansion and reversed. Not slowly. Like a response. Like a structural reorganization that had been waiting for exactly this pressure to trigger it. The warmth that had been pushing through the eye's expansion turned inward for a second, concentrated, focused, the presence not becoming more present, but becoming something that had been present differently, resolving into a new configuration. He lost the eye completely for 3 seconds. In 3 seconds, without the eye, he was blind. He was standing on a ridge in the dark with a battle he couldn't see. Then the eye came back. Larger. Not 200 meters. Not 12 kilometers of slow directional extension. He was not sure what the radius was. He could sense the full engagement at distances that had no previous meaning for the eye's operation. The awareness was not as granular as the standard 200-meter field. It was more like the brief frontier-scale expansion, but stable. A new baseline. He found Gareth immediately. Gareth was on the ground. Not dead, the aura was present, the core intact. Injured, serious. The diamond equivalent commander had breached through the gold equivalent escort screen in the 3 seconds Kael had been blind. Gareth had taken the blow and redirected it. It had cost him something in the redirecting. He said, from the ridge, to the garrison captain 3 meters away, Gareth needs immediate support. Western center position. 2 gold-capable fighters now. The captain sent them. The diamond equivalent commander was still at the front. Its escort was compromised, 4 of 8 gold equivalents down or broken contact, the remaining 4 being occupied. The commander was now exposed. He was 16 years old and had a new Sovereign's Eye radius he had not yet tested and a diamond-equivalent demon commander that Gareth had just fought to a standstill at the cost of Gareth falling. He went down from the ridge. He did not think about what he was doing. He simply went. The battle's edge was 40 meters from the barony wall. He moved through the garrison lines with the Sovereign's Eye tracking everything around him, the new radius giving him a picture of the entire engagement that was different from anything he had worked with before. Not just his immediate position, but the full tactical geometry of every combatant, every aura signature, every gap in the assault forces screen. The diamond-equivalent commander saw him coming. It had the specific quality of an opponent who assessed and found what it was looking at interesting. It said something in its own language that he didn't understand. Then it shifted into trade standard. "You are the young one." He said, "Yes." It said, "Your soldier fell." He said, "My soldier is alive." It said, "For now." He said, "Yes." It moved. He had 7 exchanges with a diamond-equivalent demon commander in the dark on his own frontier. The Eye gave him everything, every position, every strike vector, the geometry of the battle around them, where the gaps in the escort screen were, and which compact fighters were holding. He used it completely. He used every technique Gareth had taught him for 9 years. He used the specific spatial displacement that the Void Echo had been building toward since the first time he'd slipped through a wall at age 10. He did not win. He survived 7 exchanges and created enough spatial disruption around the commander's position that the assault force's command structure lost its center of gravity. The commander broke contact, not retreating, reassessing. It said something in its language again. He said, "If you come back, I'll still be here." It looked at him. Then it withdrew. The assault broke. He stood in the barony yard as the last of the assault force withdrew through the corridor. The Eye tracked them all the way to the edge of the new radius, which was significantly larger than 200 meters, and he would measure it later. The Eye did not lose them until they were well beyond the frontier's engagement zone. He stood there for a moment. Then he sat down. He did not remember the next part. Gareth told him later that he was already on the ground when the garrison captain reached him. His last clear memory was sitting. Sitting was where it ended. He woke up in his room. She was at the writing desk near the window, working. Seraphine. The lamp was on. Outside was dark evening, not morning. He had been unconscious for longer than 4 hours this time. She didn't look up immediately. He lay still for a moment, taking stock. Everything was present, the Eye at its new radius running ambient, the barony's nighttime wait at a field he couldn't fully process yet, the ceiling of his room, the lamp, her. He shifted. She looked up. She said, "The battle is over. The assault was repelled. You've been unconscious for 6 hours." She set down her pen. Gareth is alive. His left side is injured ribs, possibly one arm. He'll know more tomorrow. The garrison doctor is with him. He said, "The Eye." She said, "I don't know exactly what happened. I know what it looked like from outside. You extended it across the entire battlefield, then something happened, and then the engagement's geometry shifted completely in a way that our people could see and use. The assault force lost coordination." A pause. "You collapsed when the assault broke. You didn't go down during after." He said, "What did it look like when it happened?" She said, "The air around you changed quality for approximately 3 seconds. Then you were different. I don't have better language than that. I was watching from the perimeter gate." He said, "You came back." She said, "I had gone 4 kilometers when the alarm sounded. I came back." She picked up her pen and set it down again. Veth had already assembled the garrison maintenance team and established a secondary perimeter before I arrived. It was a pause. It was useful. He said, "Yes." He looked at the ceiling. He said, "The commission maintenance team." She said, "Fell back to the barony during the assault, came back out when the alarm ended. They're continuing the anchor repair tomorrow." He said, "Good." He looked at the ceiling for a longer moment. She said, "Sleep. There will be more to do tomorrow." He said, "You're going to the capital." She said, "Day after tomorrow. You need to be awake first." He said, "I'm awake now." She said, "You're awake enough to have this conversation." "You're not awake enough for me to leave." He did not say anything to this. He filed it in the same place as everything else he had been filing since she arrived. He said, "Thank you for coming back." She said, "The garrison has no medical training worth mentioning." He said, "Yes." She went back to her correspondence. He lay in the dark of his room with the sovereign's eye running at its new larger radius, and the specific weight of the barony at rest settling into him, and the lamp burning at Seraphine's desk, and the frontier intact, and Arc 5 behind him. He did not examine the feeling of it. He slept. The Ironmark Declaration arrived 11 days after the assault. Not by courier, Kael learned it the way he had learned most things of this kind since his network had expanded to include capital correspondence, through a letter from his third contact in the Commission's Northern Regional Office, who had received it from a factor in the border city of Herringate, who had been present at the market announcement when the Ironmark Empire's formal declaration of hostilities was read aloud in the square. The letter had taken 4 days to reach him, which meant the declaration was already 4 days old. He read it once. Then he sat at the main table and held the three-front geometry in his head. South, Demon Incursion. Active. Temporarily suppressed. The assault 11 days ago had been a direct response to the Burin network's collapse. Vethera's intelligence picture had gone dark and the assault was the response to darkness. Veth had confirmed this before departing. The Peace Faction's assessment was that Vethera would not launch a second major assault within the month, which gave the frontier approximately 3 weeks of adjusted quiet. The anchor repair was complete. North, Ironmark Empire. Now declared. The border had been tense since Year 11's trade agreement disputes. Kael had been tracking the Ironmark military buildup in the northern provinces through Oldenvain's information network, which had the best northern coverage of the 4 compact lords. The declaration was not unexpected in direction. The timing was the mechanism. Noble Council session begins February 23rd. Ironmark Declaration, mid-January. Burin Anchor Access Threshold, first week of March. The anchor was being repaired. The Burin mechanism was collapsed. But the Ironmark timing was not an accident. It was a second mechanism designed for the same window. The order had planned for contingencies. He wrote it in the private document. Not analysis, just the shape. 3 fronts. South, Demon. North, Ironmark. Internal, Succession. The geometry is the same. Sustain pressure on all 3 until the Noble Council session. Crown Prince gets his emergency powers authorization. Then he stopped. He read what he had written. He wrote, "The Royal Army is performing badly." He stopped again. This was the part he had not fully worked out until now. The Royal Army was deployed along the Ironmark border as a matter of standing military posture. They had been there for 18 months. He had the commission briefings that referenced the northern deployment, and Oldenvain's information network confirmed the specific units. 3 divisions. Regular infantry, not elite. The northern campaign for the past year had been characterized by what the Commission's regional reports called indeterminate defensive engagements, a phrase that, in the Commission's restrained institutional language, meant the army was holding positions without advancing and incurring casualties without strategic result. This was not incompetence. He had watched incompetent military operations through the Commission's records. Incompetent operations had a specific shape: escalating errors that compounded, supply failures that cascaded into tactical failures, command decisions that reflected genuine misassessment. This was different. The Northern campaign had been managing carefully, deliberately, a sustained state of not winning that kept the pressure present and the casualties continuous without ever resolving into either victory or defeat. That kind of sustained not winning required intelligence, coordination, and intention. Someone in the Royal Army's command structure was managing the Ironmark engagement deliberately to sustain it. The order's reach was not limited to frontier lords and Church of Light administrators. He sat with this for a long moment. Then he wrote 4 letters. The first was to Oldenvain, a specific request for the Northern Deployment's unit composition history over the past 18 months, framed as a compact security coordination inquiry. Oldenvain had Northern coverage. If there had been unusual command changes, transfers, or officer appointments in the relevant units, Aldenvane's information sources would know. The second was to the Commission's Northern Regional Investigator, not the office, the individual, who had been his direct source since year 9 and who understood how to receive questions that should not be recorded in formal correspondence. The question, had the Commission's Northern Regional Office noted any anomalies in the Royal Army's Northern Command appointments in the past 2 years? The third was to Torin, an update on the Eastern Frontier's status for the network's capital members, framed as routine intelligence cycle communication. Embedded in the standard format, a request for anything the capital correspondence had regarding Ironmark diplomatic activity in the month before the declaration. Declarations did not emerge from nothing. There had been meetings, intermediaries, communication channels. The fourth was to Seraphine. This letter took longer. She had been in the capital for 11 days. The commission presentation had taken place during the Noble Council's preliminary session. Her last letter, received 3 days ago, reported that the presentation had been received with the specific weight she had expected, not action yet, not urgency, but the beginning of the case's formal existence in the Council's record. The commission was opening an official investigation. That was the foothold. He wrote to her now, the Ironmark Declaration, the three-front geometry, his assessment of the Royal Army's deliberate management of the Northern engagement. He wrote it plainly. She would see the same shape when she read it. She was at the capital, which was where this geometry's center of gravity lived. He sealed the letter. Gareth was in the training yard. The ribs had healed faster than the garrison doctor had expected. Gareth's gold aura accelerated tissue repair above what standard healing allowed, and the arm had been a strain rather than a break. The doctor had been conservative in his first assessment. 10 days after the assault, Gareth was running training sessions. He was running them at approximately 70 of his previous pace, which was the specific self-management of someone who knew exactly what his current capacity was and was not exceeding it. Kael stood at the yard's edge. Gareth finished the session, dismissed the garrison fighters, and walked over. He said, Ironmark declared. Gareth said, I heard. He said, the Royal Army's Northern engagement. Gareth looked at him for a moment. He said, I've had the same thought. He said, if the Army's command structure is compromised, the Northern Front won't close regardless of what the Commission does. We need to know which units and which officers. Gareth said, I have contacts from before. Northern Campaign, 12 years ago. I don't know if they're still active. A pause. Let me write. He said, yes. Gareth said, she's in the capital. He said, yes. Gareth said, good place for the Ironmark news to be. He said, yes. Gareth went to write his letters. Kael went back to the main table. Veth had departed 6 days ago through the Koval Southern route with the first confirmed exchange documentation in a sealed Torin Factors packet. The barony was its own weight again, the specific weight of a place that had returned to its standard configuration after weeks of operating with a non-standard element present. He ran the Sovereign's eye at its new radius. The full frontier landscape settled into his ambient awareness. The garrison positions, the pooled data collection points, the southern corridor, the repaired anchor point's signature. The eye's new baseline radius was something he was still calibrating. He had measured it 3 times since the assault and gotten 3 different numbers, which meant the calibration method rather than the radius was the variable. He would figure it out. He had 3 fronts, a Royal Army that was being managed toward failure, a Noble Council session that was the Order's target window, and a capital where the Commission's case was beginning its formal existence. He began working through the morning's pool data. The southern corridor was quiet. The northern reports, when they arrived, would tell him what he needed to know. The frontier hell. He spent 4 days with the map. Not a physical map, the frontier's physical layout he had memorized years ago, but the strategic map, the one that only existed in the private document and in his head. 3 fronts. 7 actors. 1 window. He wrote it out properly the evening of the Ironmark Declaration and returned to it every morning until the shape was clear. The 3 fronts. South. Vethera's domain. Active incursion program. The Order's asset inside the command structure, Brother Voss, or whatever his name was, had been running a false picture of human military pressure for 3 years. With Birin's network collapsed and the assault repelled, Vethera's intelligence picture was dark on the human side. The Peace Faction's assessment, Vethera was reassessing. The Order's assessment of Vethera, unknown. If the Order had contingency assets within Vethera's command structure beyond the original contact, the reassessment would be managed toward continued pressure. If the original contact was isolated, the Southern Front would quiet while Vethera rebuilt her picture. 3 weeks of adjusted quiet, Veth had estimated. He was 6 of those weeks into the estimate now, conservatively. The Southern Corridor had been running standard pool data patterns since the assault. North. Ironmark Empire. Declared. The declaration had the specific language of a document that had been drafted before the pretext was chosen. The pretext was a tariff dispute in the Herringate border market that had been running for 8 months and was being resolved through the standard commission arbitration process. It had not been at crisis level. Someone had chosen it as the triggering incident and manufactured an escalation in the final 2 weeks before the declaration. The letters from Aldenvane's network, arriving in sequence over the week following the declaration, confirmed this unusual Ironmark diplomatic activity in the capital in the 3 weeks before. A specific intermediary known to operate in the border commercial community, 2 meetings that had no recorded content. The intermediary was a name he didn't recognize. He wrote it in the private document and set a flag. He would identify it. Internal. The succession. Crown Prince Aldrich II. The Noble Council session begins February 23rd. Emergency powers authorization requires either A. A formal crisis declaration by the sitting king, or B. A 2/3 Noble Council vote in the presence of an active military emergency. The king's health, he had been receiving reports through the capital network since year 10, was deteriorating. A formal crisis declaration from the king was possible but not certain. It depended on whether the Crown Prince's faction had sufficient control of the king's immediate environment to manage the timing. The 2/3 Noble Council vote path was more reliable. It required only that the Noble Council session take place during an active military emergency. 3 fronts constituted an active military emergency by any standard commission definition. He mapped the intersections. The Order does not need to win any of the 3 fronts. It needs them to be present, active, and unresolved during the Noble Council session in late February. A demon incursion ongoing or recently significant, present. A declared Ironmark engagement producing casualties, present. A succession crisis with a candidate who needs emergency powers to consolidate, present. 3 fronts, 1 window. If all 3 were in play during the Noble Council session, the Crown Prince had his emergency powers vote. The geometry of failure. He spent the second day with the Royal Army problem. Gareth's letters produced 2 responses within 5 days, 2 former campaign officers, both now retired to northern provinces. Both confirmed, in language as careful as Kael's own, that the northern campaign had been experiencing unusual command decisions in the past 14 months. One described the situation as officers being reliably unavailable for positions requiring offensive initiative. The other described it more directly. The men who make decisions don't seem to want to be generals. This was consistent with managed non-performance. It was not consistent with organic incompetence. The Commission's Northern Regional Investigator replied through the indirect channel in 8 days. There had been 7 senior officer appointments in the Northern Command in the past 2 years that had bypassed the standard Commission performance review process. All 7 had occurred within 6 months of the Ironmark trade dispute escalation beginning. 3 of the 7 had records showing Church of Light chapter affiliations. 7 appointments. 6-month window. 3 church affiliations. Not proof. A pattern. He wrote the pattern into the private document alongside the Birin pattern, the succession timing, the Ironmark declaration intermediary. The shape that emerged was not a conspiracy, exactly, it was more like a climate. The Order did not need to control every element. It needed to establish conditions in which every element moved in the same direction. The Royal Army underperforming in the north was a condition. Vethera's incursion pressure in the south was a condition. Viren's anchor sabotage had been a condition, now removed. The Ironmark declaration was a condition. The king's deteriorating health was a condition. The crown prince's succession positioning was a condition. Not all of these were the order's direct creation. Some of them the order had manufactured, others it had found and cultivated, others it had simply timed itself to exploit. The order was not running a conspiracy. It was running a weather system. And in late February, all the weather was scheduled to arrive at the same place at the same time. The countergeometry. He spent the third day with what could actually be done. The commission case was the load-bearing structure. If the case established formally, in a noble council record, that the Ironmark escalation was manufactured, that the Royal Army's command failures were managed, that the demon incursion program was orchestrated. If the case established the order's existence and its operational scale in formal legal record, then the emergency powers argument collapsed. You cannot authorize emergency powers for a crisis if the crisis is demonstrated to be manufactured. This was the argument. The commission case was the evidence. The problem was timing. The commission investigation had opened. Seraphine's letter from 5 days ago, received the same day as the Ironmark declaration, said the case was in formal existence. But opening an investigation and producing a record sufficient to present to the Noble Council before February 23rd were different things. He counted the days. 53 days to the Noble Council session. He wrote to Seraphine with the full geometry. He did not ask her to move faster than was possible. He gave her the picture and trusted that she would see what 53 days meant from inside the commission. What the frontier held. He spent the fourth day running the eye. The new radius had stabilized, he had measured it properly now, using the pooled data collection points as fixed reference markers and timing the eye's detection of events he knew were occurring at known distances. The new ambient baseline was approximately 800 meters. Not the full frontier scale awareness he had briefly held during the battle. That had been the Corps' expansion event, not the baseline. But 800 meters was 4 times the previous 200-meter standard. The domain itself, the full extent of what the Sovereign's eye could sense when he pushed, not the ambient radius, was something he had not yet fully mapped. During the assault's 3-second core transformation, the domain had briefly covered the entire engagement zone. He had not pushed it to that scale since. He noted this in the private document, the core transformation during the assault. The 3 seconds where it cracked and then reversed. Whatever that was, it is not diamond. Diamond is something else, and it is not here yet. This is an intermediate stage. A larger stable radius. A new floor. He paused. Lord Keth's scholars called it the sovereign manifestation. The structural response to what is coming. I don't know what's coming. I'm beginning to form a hypothesis about it. He stopped. He closed the document. He ran the morning's pooled data cycle and went to find Gareth for the afternoon's training session. The southern corridor was quiet. The anchor point's signature was clean. The eye held its 800-meter ambient over the frontier with the specific settled quality of a thing that had found its level. 53 days. He had work to do. The king died on the 14th day of February, year 12. He did not learn this immediately. The king died at mid-morning and the announcement was held for 4 hours. He learned this detail later, from Seraphine's letter that arrived 12 days after the event, in which she described what she had been doing in that 4-hour window and why the 4-hour hold mattered. What he learned first was what his capital contact, Davin, a commission records clerk who had been part of the network since year 10, and who was one of 3 contacts with enough access to hear significant news within hours, managed to get out in an afternoon dispatch to the Eastern Factors route. King Aldrich I passed this morning. Crown Prince takes the title. Coronation announced for the day after tomorrow. Session begins February 23rd as scheduled. 14 words. 9 days before the Noble Council session. He read the 14 words, set the letter on the main table, and sat for a moment. He had known the king's health was failing. He had been tracking the reports for 2 years through the network, not with any design at first, simply because the king's health was a political variable that would affect everything the commission's capital operation was building toward. The reports had been consistent and progressively conclusive. Knowing a thing was possible was not the same as it happening. He sat with this for longer than he usually sat with things. The king had been on the throne for 41 years. He had presided over the Eastern Frontiers establishment, the original compact negotiations, the Commission's expanded frontier mandate in year 7. The specific weight of his reign was not something Kael had thought about as a political abstraction. He had thought about it as context, as the condition under which he had grown up and under which every operation he had built existed. The Commission case existed because the sitting king's legal framework allowed it to exist. He did not know what the Crown Prince's legal framework would allow. This was the question that he had been building the answer to for 8 years, but the answer was still speculative. Commission cases built under one regime did not automatically carry forward. The specific legal mechanisms that gave the Commission its investigative authority over noble council members, mechanisms that had taken 3 years to establish through case precedent, could be narrowed, could be reviewed, could, if the new king had his emergency powers authorization, be suspended pending the emergency. He wrote in the private document, "The king is dead." He stopped. He wrote, "The work continues. The case is in formal existence. It cannot be removed from the record. It can be delayed. The difference between delay and defeat is the noble council session." He stopped again. He wrote, "I am 16 years old and the king has died and I am calculating political structures." He did not examine this. He closed the document. He wrote to Seraphine. He wrote, "The 14-word report, the 9-day window, the specific question about the Commission's case status and whether the formal investigation record was now protected by procedural rules that would survive a transition of authority." He asked her what was happening in the capital. He asked her what she needed from the frontier. He sealed the letter and had it dispatched in the morning's earliest courier. Then he wrote to Aldenvane. The Compact's northern lord had the best intelligence on the Ironmark situation and the most reliable picture of what the Royal Army's northern engagement looked like from a position close to it. The Ironmark Declaration had produced 3 weeks of border skirmishing. No major engagement yet, but the pattern of skirmish locations was consistent with Ironmark probing the defensive line for weaknesses. Aldenvane's most recent letter, received 5 days ago, had included a specific note about an Ironmark feint that had drawn a poorly deployed Royal Army response. The specific kind of poor deployment that suggested command decisions were being made for reasons other than tactical effectiveness. He wrote to Aldenvane about the king's death in terms that Aldenvane, who was careful and political, would read correctly. The transition creates uncertainty about the Commission's operational parameters. The Compact needs to establish its position with the new king before the Noble Council session. He asked Aldenvane to confirm whether the Compact's four-lord structure had a standard protocol for communicating a collective position to the throne on transition. He did not know if it did. He suspected it did not. If it did not, he would draft one. He wrote to Brennan and Ketterly with the same message in the same terms, calibrated for each lord's reading of the situation. Brennan would respond with 4 pages and a proposal. Ketterly would respond with 1 page and the essential question. He dispatched the letters. Then he went to find Gareth. Gareth was in the small training room, the interior one the garrison used in winter, running a solo conditioning session. He was at full capacity now. The ribs were fully healed. The arm was fine. He had been running at full output for a week. Kael stood in the doorway. Gareth finished the movement sequence, turned, and looked at him. Kael said, "The king died this morning. Coronation day after tomorrow. Noble Council session February 23rd. Gareth was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Do you have what you need for the session?" Kael said, "The commission case is in formal record. Whether it's complete enough to present before February 23rd depends on what Seraphine can do in 9 days." Gareth said, "She'll do what can be done." Kael said, "Yes." Gareth said, "What do you need from me?" Kael said, "I need the frontier quiet. The pool data has been running standard patterns for 3 weeks. If the southern corridor stays quiet through the session, that's one front contained. The Ironmark front is outside our management. The internal front is outside our management." He looked at Gareth. "What we can control is the frontier." Gareth said, "The frontier will be quiet." He said, "Yes." He did not say, "I hope it will be quiet." I know Veth's estimate was 3 to 6 weeks, and we're at 6. I know the southern corridor's quiet is borrowed time. I know that any significant incursion in the next 9 days would give the Crown Prince exactly the emergency he needs. He did not say any of this. He had said it in the private document. Gareth knew the shape of the problem without the specific articulation. Gareth said, "You'll sleep tonight." He said, "Yes." He went back to the study and sat at the main table and ran the Sovereign's eye in its full 800-meter ambient across the frontier. The barony at evening. The garrison at their positions. The southern corridor in its current quiet. The anchor point's clean signature. The pool data collection points running their standard cycles. He thought about the 41 years of the king's reign. The specific weight of a man who had been on the throne for longer than Kael had been alive, longer than his father had been at the mine, longer than the eastern frontier had been the eastern frontier. He thought about Seraphine in the capital, 11 days away by courier. What she was doing in those 4 hours while the announcement was being held. He thought about the Noble Council session 9 days away and the geometry of what was required. He did not examine any of this at the level of feeling. He mapped it at the level of structure and found the work that could be done within the 9 days and began doing it. The private document, before he closed it for the night, had 3 entries. The first, a complete map of the commission case's current status and what it needed to establish in the next 9 days. The second, a draft protocol for compact collective communication to the throne on transition, which he would send to the 4 lords in the morning. The third, King Aldrich I, 41 years. The work he authorized continues. I intend to make it worth the authorization. He closed the document. He slept. The coronation speech arrived from the capital 7 days after it was delivered. He read it at the main table on a February morning with the pooled data cycle running in the background and the Sovereign's eye at its 800-meter ambient holding the frontier's quiet. The Noble Council session had opened the day before, per Davin's 14-word dispatch, which had crossed paths with Seraphine's letter somewhere on the Eastern Road. He read the speech once through. Then he got a blank page and began reading it again. King Aldrich II of the House of Aldenvane. The name carried the same weight as his father's, formalized now, no longer Crown Prince, had delivered the speech at the Coronation Hall in the capital's inner district before the assembled Noble Council. The Commission's full board, the Church of Light's senior ecclesiastical officials, and the representatives of the major trading guilds. The speech was 23 paragraphs. He read it with the specific attention he had been learning to give to legal political texts since he was 10 years old, when Seraphine's predecessor had first given him commission case briefs to read as training materials, not for what the words said, but for the structure the words were building. He began marking. Paragraph 3. In this time of exceptional threat, when the kingdom's borders face pressure from multiple directions simultaneously, the ancient compact between the throne and the Noble Council's collective authority is the foundation on which all legitimate response must be built. He underlined ancient compact. It was not a standard phrase. It was not in the traditional coronation language. He wrote in the margin, not precedent, construction. Ancient compact is being defined here, not referenced. Paragraph 5. The authorities that the Noble Council has historically entrusted to the throne in moments of national emergency are not extraordinary powers. They are the proper expression of the throne's responsibility to act where circumstances require speed and coherence that deliberative process cannot provide. He marked proper expression. In the margin, reframing. Emergency powers have been recharacterized as not emergency. This is the legal move. Paragraph 9. The northern border, the southern approaches, and the internal pressures of this transitional moment are not separate challenges. They are a single, coordinated threat to the kingdom's integrity that requires a single, coherent response under unified command. He stopped. Coordinated threat. Unified command. He wrote at the top of the page, in large letters, "This is the argument." This was not a coronation speech. It was the legal foundation for an emergency powers authorization request. Every paragraph was laying a stone. He continued reading. Paragraph 12. The Commission of Frontier Security, which has served the kingdom admirably in its defined mandate, must be understood as a component of the unified response, coordinating with and reporting through the throne's direct command structure during this period of national emergency. He held the page for a long moment. Reporting through the throne's direct command structure. That was the mechanism. That was why the commission case needed to reach the Noble Council record before the emergency powers authorization went to vote. If the commission became formally subordinate to the crown during the emergency, the investigation's findings would be reviewed by the authority it was investigating. He wrote in the margin, "The case is the only protection the case has." He continued through the remaining paragraphs, marking everything that was construction rather than statement. By paragraph 23, he had marked 11 specific phrases. He laid out all 11. Ancient compact. Invented precedent for Noble Council authority transfer. Proper expression of the throne's responsibility. Emergency powers reframed as standard governance. Single, coordinated threat. 3 separate front problems unified into one manageable crisis. Unified command. The administrative structure emergency powers would create. The Commission, as a component of the unified response. Commission subordinated to Crown authority. During this period of national emergency. Time-bounded language that sounds limited but isn't defined. The Noble Council's collective wisdom. Council positioned as advisor rather than check. Speed and coherence that deliberative process cannot provide. Justification for bypassing deliberative process. Historical emergency. Manufactured precedent in real time. The kingdom's integrity. Crisis framed as existential threat. Unified response under unified command. The authorization target stated plainly. 11 phrases. 1 architecture. The speech had been written by someone who understood legal construction. He turned to a fresh page. He wrote the counterargument. Not the political counterargument. The commission case was the political counterargument, and that was Seraphine's work. The structural counterargument. What each of the 11 phrases was actually doing, why it didn't hold as legal construction, what the commission's investigation would reveal about this single coordinated threat. Framing when the cross-border order operation was entered into formal record. He wrote for 3 hours. Then he took what he had written and transferred it into a letter to Seraphine. He did not tell her what to do. She was at the Noble Council session, and he was at the Eastern Frontier, and she was the one who could see the room. He gave her the analysis. He gave her the 11 phrases and the architecture. He gave her the counterargument and the specific legal weaknesses in each construction. He wrote at the end, "The speech is the authorization argument. The commission case is the counterargument. Whatever can be entered into formal Noble Council record before the vote creates the legal obstacle. I don't know what you can do in this time frame. I know what the picture looks like from here. You can see the room." He sealed the letter. He had it dispatched in the morning's earliest courier. He sat back at the main table. The frontier was quiet. The southern corridor's pool data had run clean for 27 days now, the longest uninterrupted quiet since the second major raid in year 10. The Ironmark border was producing dispatches from Aldenvane every 3 days. The northern engagement was sustaining its characteristic managed stalemate without escalation. The Noble Council session had opened the day before. He could not be in the capital. He was 16 years old and the commanding officer of the Eastern Frontier, and his frontier was the quietest front in the 3-front crisis that was being used to justify emergency powers. And his presence here was both necessary and completely peripheral to the thing that mattered. He sat with this. Then he wrote in the private document, "The analysis is done. The letter is sent. The frontier is held. Whatever happens in the Noble Council session happens with the record I've been building for 8 years and the letter I sent this morning." He thought for a moment. He wrote, "I have read the speech and I have marked every phrase that will become law if the authorization passes. It is clear what the speech is doing. Whether anyone else in the room can see what it is doing, whether the commission's case is strong enough to establish it before the vote, is not something I can determine from here." He stopped. He wrote, "I trust that she can see it." He did not examine this further. He closed the document. He ran the morning's pool data cycle. He went to the training yard for the afternoon session with Gareth. The Sovereign's eye held its 800-meter ambient across the frontier in the specific quiet of a February day that was cold and clear and held. He was 16 years old, and the work he had been doing for 8 years was in someone else's hands now, for the days that remained until the vote. He had done what could be done. He worked,